Hello, crafty friends. My name is Jessica, and welcome back to my channel. Today we have a card for you using some watercolor distress pencils and some die cuts and just really a loose kind of feel when I'm coloring these. I was recently inspired by Amy R. over at Prairie Paper and Ink. She had been using these distress watercolor pencils quite a bit lately, and I decided it was time for me to get mine out. Now, I only have the sets 1 through 3, but there are 3 other sets that are out there currently. What I liked about these is you could buy one set and pretty much get one of every color of the rainbow in each set. So when you add them all 3 together, you get a decent amount of colors. So the way I like to color with these is I like to let them sit in a cup of water and then use a brush to pencil technique. So I let them sit in the water to get nice and soft. The pigment gets nice and loosened up, and then I go ahead and use it as a palette and take my brush to it and then rub those on my die cuts. So I'm getting started with the color Kitsch Flamingo, and I'm just going to go ahead and build this color up. What's really fun about these pencils is that if you're not happy with the way the color's laying, maybe there's a little bit too much water, if you just wait a little bit, the pigment gets a little bit more thicker and you can lay it on your paper a little bit more color dense. So as you can see here, I started off with that Kitsch Flamingo, then I moved to pick raspberry, and then I'm just going back and forth until I get a pretty decent fun kind of blend. I didn't want the 2 colors to be too stark next to each other, so I'm trying to soften the lines of that picked raspberry to get more of an ombre feel. Now I'm going in and doing the smaller die cut from this set. This is the Daisy Heads set from Simon Says Stamp. And I really love this die cut because it is a plate die cut and it cuts out every single image that you see here, as well as the centers, all in one go. I love that style of dies, and so I really love when Simon does that, especially for their buildable florals, because it just makes things so much quicker and so much easier. So I'm doing the same color scheme here using the picked raspberry and the Kitsch Flamingo just to create that lovely ombre. And then we're going to go ahead and add mustard seed to the centers. And in order to give those a little bit of dimension, I picked up a little bit of the picked raspberry to add to the bottom of the centers there. So with this technique, these images are pretty damp. I went really heavy with saturation on the water and the pigment, and so they do need to dry, but I do need to move on to the next color. But I wanted to talk about the Canson extra large cold press paper. I decided to reach for this instead of the distress oxide or the distress paper because it is a little bit thicker, and I knew that I was going to be adding a lot of moisture onto this paper and I wanted something a little bit heftier. So that is why I went with the Canson cold pressed. I do not know the difference between cold pressed and hot pressed. I don't know if that's appropriate that I should have used the cold press, but I just know that it is thicker than the distress, and that's the only reason why I reached for it today. Now we're going to go ahead and color the butterflies. This is the Adeline butterfly. It's a really beautiful shaped image, and I really, really loved it. I picked this up at Create, and I'm so happy that I did. So we're going in right now with Crackling Campfire and Spiced Marmalade. So Spiced Marmalade was the first color, and then I went ahead and brought in the Crackling Campfire just around the edges. When I was thinking of this card and how I was going to lay it all together, I really wanted the butterflies to have that very loose monarch color scheme. And so that's why I went in with the oranges and then just the darker orange around the edges. I'm going to go ahead and let those dry. We're going to do a quick clean and then we're going to move on to the greenery. Really quick, I did use walnut stain for the butterfly bodies. But now we're going to go ahead and go in with Rustic Wilderness and peeled paint for the greenery here. And again, what's really nice about this style that I'm doing, I'm calling it just this loose watercolor, is it's not about precision. It's more just whimsical and fun, getting the color down onto these die cuts, not so much caring about being realistic or making sure that your shadows are appropriate. It's really just all about laying color down. Now, a little bit more about these distress colored pencils. These are a watercolor, obviously, but what's really fun about them too is they're super pigmented and bright colored. It's hard to get some watercolors to be this vibrant. And so that's what I really love about these, especially this loose watercoloring. You can get such beautiful, beautiful colors very, very quickly. So like I said, I wanted these to look like monarchs. So I went ahead and grabbed the black soot, and I'm doing the same kind of technique where I'm just doing that paintbrush to pencil, and then you can flick with these, which is just another added bonus. I went ahead and did dry all of these off camera so that we can go ahead and get started building up the card base and not worrying about smudging. I plan to use a very white background, and so I didn't want that color transferring to that white background as we're building the card. I believe this is the first time that I'm using these die cuts, so I went ahead and brought the packaging in so that I can kind of get a visual of how they're supposed to layer. However, what's really nice about these is you do not have to be precise. I tend to want to make sure that it looks how it needs to look on the packaging, but as I was playing with this, it wasn't really necessary. It's more about how it visually looks to you, and if it looks good to you, then it looks good. That's the beauty of these dies is there's a lot of freedom in building these florals to how you would like to build them. So I'm going to go ahead and build everything. I do not use all of the pieces today, but it's always nice to have extras just in case. I also keep a little stockpile for my daughter. She loves to play with these extra die cuts and make cards for the people in our lives to receive. So it's a win-win for both of us if I make a few extra that she can play with later. So we're going to go ahead and build everything up. We're going to build the butterflies, and then we're going to go ahead and start building the card. I'll take this moment while we're building just to let you know that I have all of the supplies listed below in the description, so be sure to check it out. And also note that they are affiliate links, and what that means that is if you click on a link and shop with me, I do receive a small commission at no cost to you. This just helps keep my product plentiful and my craft room new. So I went ahead and took a panel of 80-pound Neenah Solar White and embossed it using this streaming embossing folder. This is one that I recently did also pick up at Create, which I was super excited to add to my craft room. And I'm going to go ahead and pop it up. But what you'll notice is I have started using a different card base, and it is a lot brighter white than the Neenah Solar White. And I didn't like the contrast. It made the panel look dingy or maybe more vanilla. And so what I'm doing here, well, after I realized that I am out of tape runner and I had to refill it, is I'm taking another panel of Neenah 80-pound and I'm covering up that card base because that card base was way whiter than the background. So now I don't have that contrasting colors and they all match. So I went ahead and we trimmed that streaming panel, the one that I embossed, down to 4 by 5 1/4. And then we're gonna fiddle. This is my favorite part of the video. Fiddling with die cuts and just fiddling in general is something that is part of my process. I like to leave it in just to show you guys that I do not go into a card knowing exactly what I want it to look like. I like to fiddle and make sure that I have it feels good to me. I call it my inner crafty feng shui. It's all about how pleasing it looks to me. And when I get that feeling, then I know it's complete. So we're going to go ahead and add the Let's Celebrate. I'm cut it out of the 110-pound or 100-pound Neenah Solar White and using it to pop up the die cuts. So I layered it by 4. We're going to go ahead and do 3 white and 1 gold. And this just helps, one, make this really delicate die cut more stable, but it also adds dimension. I chose not to use the shadow die for this. I didn't want to cover up lots of that floral. And by adding all these extra die cuts, it just makes it, one, more sturdy, and 2, helps it stand out on the back of this panel. So I apologize that I'm off camera, but here I am just making sure that I have the layout the way that I want it. I'm struggling with how many florals to use and how many butterflies, but we get there eventually. So now we're going to go ahead and build the card. I'm going to use a mixture of liquid glue and foam squares. When all said and done, this card is definitely going to be one that's probably better off handed to somebody versus going through the mail. Although there are some things that you can do to ensure that a thicker card with all of these extra bits gets to where it's going in the mail in the best way. You could use a bubble mailer to send this. You can add on some extra postage. You could go to the post office and make sure that it's hand canceled. There are some things that you can do. It is going to cost more probably because of the thickness and to ensure that it gets there safely. Now, I really wanted to draw attention to the color of the greenery that I laid down originally. I love the way that that rustic wilderness and that peeled paint are playing together on those greens. Probably going to be my go-to floral color moving forward. I love, love, love the way that that turned out. Now that we've got kind of the base of our card, we're going to go ahead and just keep fiddling, keep fiddling. I really wanted to use all four of those florals. So you're going to see here that I'm going to add that and cover up that beautiful greenery, which happens sometimes in card making. But what I did is I popped up the first three, and then we're going to go ahead and add that fourth one with some glue just to allow the die cut to lay appropriately and just to create that depth of field with these die cuts. I like having a mixture of liquid glue right to the card base and then popped up with some foam squares. I've busted out the trusty stamp block here to make sure that we're gluing things appropriately. These poor blocks, while they do get used, I do not use them for stamping. And if I do, it is very rare. I did recently add a mini Misty to my repertoire, so I have been enjoying the size of that Misty and find that it's easier to use instead of using stamp blocks for those layered stamps that we have in our craft room. So I went ahead and we're popping up the butterflies. I did decide to use two. And when I added these to the card, I decided I wasn't going to add any extras, like no shimmers. I was just going to let the card speak for itself. But then I felt like it was kind of unbalanced because it seemed a little bit heavy with after adding just the two butterflies. So I did decide to grab some gold confetti coins from Simon Says Stamp and or sequins, and we're going to go ahead and add those onto the panel to kind of help offset and create just a little bit more balance. It's a full card, but it's full of fun and full of beauty. And then that's going to be the card for today. I appreciate you joining me. Again, be sure to check out the links below for all of the items that I used today to create this card. And I just want to let you know to take care.